All right. I think we're slowly coming online on Facebook and YouTube and hopefully on Twitch. Hello, everyone. My name is David Danzig, and this is going to be our first SASA talk where me and my colleagues are going to talk about what is SASA and try to explain to everybody what we're doing and the different projects we're working on and why we're doing it. So, to jump off at the beginning, I started this organization in order to get a grip on what's going on in ancient studies fields in America. Things are looking somewhat negative. People are not enrolling in courses so much. A lot of pressure exists on graduate students looking for jobs when there really doesn't look like there are so many going forward. And this was the case well before the COVID crisis hit. So, in order to start working to reverse this trend, I started contacting all these wonderful people, and every person I've talked to has been really, really interested in getting involved and trying to do what they can to help. And the idea is to promote interest in ancient studies by grabbing people's attention who are already interested in the ancient world and showing them how there's so many interesting things going on behind that in how we study the ancient world and how we understand it. And that really ancient studies is a thriving, fascinating um, topic and endeavor. And through that, then um, our hope is to boost engagement and enrollment in colleges and to push ancient studies forward into the future rather than letting it slowly wither away. Um, we all believe that ancient studies is a vital, important part of our cultural heritage in some sense or another, not directly necessarily in a direct sort of ethnic cultural way, but in ourselves as people in the modern world who want to engage with the human past and different cultures and different societies and understand how people were, and the different variety of ways people can be and exist politically, economically, in all ways. So, we're working on a whole host of projects to get people more and more engaged, and we're gonna start talking about some of that. But before that, I think we should sort of go around the room and talk about each one of us why we got involved in SASA and why we think it's worthwhile to save ancient studies and what we're trying to do about it, and maybe a little bit about personal stories. Who's up next?
Okay, well, yeah, I guess you kind of did it, but David, you didn't really say like your background, like your education background
We
and
should
stuff.
try to do that also. So I'm and going to be an eighth year PhD candidate at the Institute for the Study of the Ancient World, which is part of New York University. I am an ancient Near Eastern historian. Right now, I am studying for my dissertation social identity developments in 6th and 5th century BCE Babylonia, which sounds very, very arcane and narrow, but actually is about how a lot of different immigrant groups ended up in this place far, far away from their homelands and then adapted to new cultures and tried to figure out strategies for how they were going to either maintain themselves culturally, ethnically distinct, or sort of blend in and figure out how to make their livings in this new place. That's what I'm working on. And now we can go back to Lauren.
Okay, hi everyone. So my name's Lauren. I'm multiple roles with SASA actually. Um, Kind of started out just seeing how I could volunteer, like most of the people here, I think a lot of the people here. And ended up now I'm like the live events coordinator. So it's the reading groups, and then we're gonna have live events in the fall too. That we'll talk more about in a minute. And I'm also the coordinator for the community communications team of interns. So all the fun, lovely new social media posts you've been seeing is my wonderful communications team, who is interns from around the world. Actually, SASA is very worldwide already too. So my team is like crazy. There's like Hong Kong, I'm in Denver, like UK, like everywhere. So yeah, that's pretty much my role with SASA. My background, I have a BA in classical civilizations from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And now I own a hotel booking company. So it has nothing to do with classics. And that's kind of why I really wanted to volunteer with SASA, was because although, and people in the academic world in ancient history will know what I mean right away, although I have a BA, that means not very much in the ancient history world. You need to keep going on with school. So because I'm not like affiliated with a school or an institution or anything like that, it's a lot harder for me to get access to materials and whatever. So that's a huge like thing about SASA's mission, is getting out more access of materials and whatever to people, and just information in general. So that's like what the reading groups are most of the reading groups are on topics that they don't offer a lot in schools or at universities. So to me, it's really interesting because like I don't know, there's so specific ones, like about the women in ancient Egypt one is more focusing on like the average woman versus royal women. So even that is just really hard stuff to find information on in general, let alone outside of a college context. So yeah, that's what just got me still like more and more interested in SASA, because it right away had things that I couldn't have found by myself without an organization like this. So yay, yeah. Oh, and guys, I should call on someone. Maybe Shane is our wonderful leader of what this reading group is actually supposed to be today.
Hello, I'm Shane. I'm a PhD candidate, going to be sixth year at Brown University in Israelite religion, Assyriology, Egyptology. I work broadly on what I call cultural hegemony and counter hegemony in the Late Bronze and Iron Age Levant. With SASA, I do several things, including leading several reading groups, mentoring some of the one of the interns, and just broadly on the leadership council or committee, whatever we're calling it. So yeah, that's my little intro. I'll keep that short so we have time to discuss some things. I'll call on Christian though if we're calling on people.
What do I do?
Talk about how unqualified you are to be a part of this.
How unqualified I am. Well, I don't know. I just kind of make it up as I go along. Is that a disqualification? I don't think it is.
Everyone that comes to your reading groups can so tell that you're just making things up.
I mean, I'm not going to say never, but for the most part, no. For the most part, it's like based on something. Sorry, I'm over here working on a different thing at the same time. So I was like kind of listening to what y'all are talking about and all the SASA things and what we're trying to do. But I'm not sure Shane, what question did you want me to answer?
Well, why don't you talk about why you're interested in SASA and what you think is valuable about it?
Well, a lot of the reasons you said, study of the ancient world is dropping, support for study of the ancient world broadly defined has been dwindling. It's been a sort of gradual decline. It was accelerated by the 2008 financial crisis, and then we sort of never recovered any of those academic positions that were lost during the financial crisis. And then with the latest economic crisis as a result of COVID, we're probably going to see more positions lost and sort of never come back. So for the survival of the study of the ancient world, let me jump off of that for a second, because that's really all the standard sort of stuff. Like, we know the jobs are going away. We know there's not a lot of money for the study of the ancient world. Part of that is enrollment. Universities depend on undergraduate students enrolling in classes to justify the expense, and really because they depend on the income from tuition and various things. They really need undergrads paying the bills. But there's sort of a bigger problem than that, besides the like immediate financial implications. And that is just the model of the study of the ancient world. I felt for a long time kind of doesn't make sense anymore. So at least I can only speak to my field, which is Egyptology. But for a long time, it had this model of philanthropic support. And that's most Egyptological institutions today actually depended on very, very wealthy people giving huge amounts of money to establish chairs for professors and establish academic departments, or even universities, as in the case of University of Chicago. And that just really doesn't exist anymore. People, there just aren't any aristocrats with consumption wintering in Egypt. So that's not a thing that exists. And that's, funnily enough, that's still kind of the model that Egyptology depends on to function. And it's, it depends on it. We're still kind of riding that wave of massive support, public support, but then, very wealthy public support, people who are willing to donate money to academic departments. And that just doesn't really exist anymore. So we have to change the way we think about what we're doing completely. And I think a big part of that needs to address the fact that we would be doing a whole lot better if we would actually capitalize on the popularity of this subject. Like ancient Egypt, again, I'm speaking predominantly about ancient Egypt, but I think some of these things could be extended to apply elsewhere. Ancient Egypt is super exciting for a lot of people, and really very little of what we do reaches broader audiences. But then at the same time, if we don't have these kind of donor gifts coming in constantly supporting the growth of the field, it will stagnate because there's just not the enrollment that can justify the cost of these things. So how do we change that model while at the same time kind of addressing both situations at the same time? Address the fact that there's not the same support, and also address the fact that Egyptologists have sort of conveniently neglected the rest of society for pretty much all of our academic history. And it's only just now becoming the case that we can't survive that way. And if that's what it takes, that's a good enough reason. It would have been nice if, in the 1970s, when we had abundant money, we would have started, understanding ourselves as academics, as members of a broader society, and kind of sharing what we're doing with our fellow human beings. But that didn't happen. So now it has to happen. So let's use that, right? Like that's a good thing that should have happened already. Let's use the financial crisis as the springboard to just be better human beings as academics. That would be nice. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certainly through my years of training, public outreach has basically been completely ignored. I know the Institute for the Study of the Ancient World certainly has public outreach in mind, but the students really aren't that involved with it. And there isn't an emphasis on that being a part of who you are as a scholar, which I think we all agree that needs to change going forward, to rein in that interest that we know is out there, and connect it to ancient studies for people, and get people inspired. Completely agree. So
yeah, we kind of need to change the whole paradigm of thinking of ourselves as, scholarship has this kind of monastic model where you lock yourself in a cell and just pray about ancient Egypt for hours on end until you obtain some sort of enlightenment. And like,
I love you use the word pray. That was amazing.
I'm kind of abusing the metaphor a little bit, but that's the idea, is that the idea of scholarship
you're meditating.
We're supposed to be a bit sequestered, and it's just not going to fly anymore. And it has a lot of consequences that we should have addressed before. In Egyptology, we have ancient aliens for a reason. People are interested in the subject, they want to know about it, and they come up empty. So they find the first thing they can, which is the History Channel, which is a for-profit company that actually cares nothing about history and is very happy to crank out whatever it can. And that's, the easiest thing to find. And
well,
we failed to address that.
One of our executive committee members, George Vallis, recently pointed out to me that The whole concept of ancient aliens really is a failure of people in our society to recognize that ancient Egyptians could have produced these monuments and this amazing civilization and culture. So that it must have been somebody else, and who else could it be? It must be aliens. But just having to go there means that you really don't understand much about the ancient world and how incredible these people were. These are regular people just like me and you.
And he also pointed out, why do we have ancient aliens so prominently for like Egypt and stuff like that, but not for Greece and Rome? Tilt head, I think we all know what I mean.
Yeah, I think we know what you're implying. There's definitely a racist component to all of those ideas. But there's also just, there's that component is woven throughout our society, and you can find it just about anywhere. Even if you subtract that, there's still a certain amount of just kind of a lack of understanding of these really important historical facts, like the growth of governments and systems and infrastructure that enable these things to happen. That Egyptian civilization didn't just emerge out of nothing. And of course, we know that. We have all this evidence, but people don't know about it because we haven't actually communicated it very effectively.
I just want to read. Oh no, Shane, you should go. I'm going to read a comment that Ellie said in a second, but Shane, you go.
I was going to say, it's not just a failure to communicate to the broader public either. It's we're put in an ivory tower, or have traditionally been put in an ivory tower, where we only really disseminate this information to graduate students as well. So we're not really taught how to teach undergrads, and that's something that needs to change too. So it's not just public outreach to the broader public, it's even to people in our own institutions that we're not succeeding in reaching.
Yeah. Ellie said something along the same lines, who is one of our wonderful SASA interns. And she comes to a bunch of the reading groups too. She said that communication outside of academia is not emphasized. You are absolutely right. Quite the opposite. Having a blog, etc., is frowned upon rather than encouraged, which I completely agree with. Again, I'm not as deep into this world, but even I recognize that as someone with just my BA. It's not like you can find like all these blogs of people with their PhD actually talking about legitimate things, because it would basically, from my understanding, be frowned upon. That's not something academic to do. That's like just not how it goes.
You also don't get paid for it, and that's a big part of the problem. We have this very traditional model of academic publishing that only rewards a very specific sort of output. And I'll share my perspective. I think I'll emphasize that it is only my perspective, but I think academic papers are just an abysmal way to share information. They're incredibly ineffective and inefficient. They're hard to get. They are published by for-profit companies that basically exploit the labor of academics. But as an academic, if you're getting paid, you are then being evaluated according to your productivity, and academic papers count. Things like blog posts or really any other sort of academic output does not count. So a big part of what people inside the academy are trying to do is rethink the way that we measure academic productivity. So there's something called, what do they call them? Microcitations or microattributions that are now being sort of developed as a way to create these projects. The example that I know from ISAW is Pleiades, where people have to go in and put in all this information. Pleiades is like an online database of locations on a world map, and all the locations have permalinks to them. So if you want to cite a place in the world, in the ancient world, you can use the Pleiades link. But if there is no Pleiades site already, you have to create it. Well, creating it takes time. You have to identify the location on the map and describe it and do all that sort of thing. And in traditional terms, that's not academic work. It wouldn't count for anything. But then, people are developing this model where you actually get a little citation with that entry that you created, and then you can cite it as part of your output. So
I will say to anyone who may be listening that's not super familiar, these are generally things that I would say are more specific to the American system. There are, like, the UK, for example, rewards public outreach, and that's part of your tenure, not the same thing, but a sort of equivalent in the UK to the US situation of tenure. So there are places that do reward public scholarship and do expect you to produce public scholarship. And at this point, the US is just not one of those places.
And that's the issue, is that the US has so many prominent universities for ancient studies and are not doing that stuff. So all these good people who are graduating from US universities, like my fellows around me in this Zoom meeting, it's not part of their stuff, like Shane said, tenure, to do that. So then they're like, why, you know, and then as Christian said, then they're not, it's stuff you're not being paid for and you did a lot of work for.
It's not just that, it's generally, it's not that nobody says anything about it, it's that you're explicitly told it's a waste of time. Like, why would you do this?
Yep. So I actually want to convey my thanks to everybody who's participated in SASA thus far and say that I'm grateful that you guys have all taken this brave leap with me, because I know that in some sense it does take a degree of bravery to stick your neck out here a little bit in a way that is unusual and uncharacteristic for what people expect. But the only way that change happens is that it begins. So there are plenty of projects that people are trying to work on in a piecemeal ways. Different organizations try to work on, people personally try to work on for putting the ancient world out there and drawing interest in. But I think we all feel that it really needs a sustained, consistent, centralized, big effort. And that is why that we've been working this summer on producing our year-long social media campaign, which should be starting September 1st.
Yes. And this actually, I just want to say really quick, Ellie had another comment that she said, but then this should be taught as well, like public outreach should be taught as well. And this still goes along with what we're saying, because yes, like if we're expecting people to do that, then that's something that we should teach people how to do too. And it's not something that they focus on here, is even like, as you said, it's like totally looked down upon and like vocally looked down upon. So of course they're not teaching you how to do it then either. But anyways, about public outreach, our social media campaign. David, do you want to keep explaining it?
Yeah, sure. So I think SASA's idea is that the people who are most relevant towards changing the situation in ancient studies at universities over the next several years are people who are going to be entering universities or are already in. So by that we mean high school students and lower class undergraduates. Those are the people who might actually start enrolling in courses of ancient studies and really take it on in the near future. So we're developing a year-long social media campaign that is targeted at teens and young adults to draw their interest in and connect it to ancient studies. So on the one side, we're having a whole bunch of different interesting posts produced by our wonderful, wonderful group of unpaid interns who are doing great work, all under the tutelage of the wonderful Pinar Dogren in the other room from Christian. And they're really producing really interesting tiny little sort of micro research, shall we call it, about different interesting subjects in the ancient world that lots of people probably have never heard of. There are certainly some that I've never heard of. And they're very fascinating. And each of these posts is going to come out every day or every other day, and over the course of this next year. And each one connects to a popular or semi-popular article on that topic. So if somebody is, say, grabbed and interested by this video on ancient fig cakes, Egyptian fig cakes or something like that, that one of the interns produced, that they can go read about the recipe, the ancient recipe, how it was made, and what its significance was in ancient Egypt. So hopefully through this process, we really our goal is to engage 100,000 young people in different ancient studies, in the ancient world, and a whole bunch of range of different ancient world fields, and try to draw their interest. I don't know if anybody else has anything to say on this.
Maybe just a little, yeah, maybe just to say a little bit more about like what these like categories, I don't know what to call it, are like, so one of them, the one I'm most excited about is the one that David just said, is the recipe one. Because it was partially my idea to do recipe stuff. So I'm like super happy about that one. Also because I love cooking, so yay. There's also one that's going to be kind of like guess this artifact. So it's like just really weird, crazy looking artifacts and stuff. And then I think it will be fun to see what people guessed they are. I'm sure we'll have some really interesting answers. And then of course, information about what it actually is posted like later. What else? What other categories were there for it? Those are my two favorite ones. So those are always
historical first-person narratives, historical fiction that are being written about a day in the life of either some very famous person in the ancient world or a totally unknown person in the ancient world, and what it would have been like for them. And those are really, really interesting. I've read a couple of them, and I think it'll be really fascinating to some people to see how similar ancient people are to us.
Mm-hmm. And then another part of this too is the ancient and me thing, which we just posted about like 2 days ago or something, a few days ago. So go look for that post as well, or find it on our website. Ancient and Me is something where you can send in like a little story about how you got into ancient studies or why you like certain ancient things, ancient places, whatever. It's a really lovely picture of me, nice and sunburned in Belize. But yeah, and you can kind of send in your selfie with it or a picture of whatever artifact you're talking about or the location you're talking about. And then that's going to be one of the posts during the week too, is we'll highlight someone who like sent in these ancient and me posts. So please go to our page and send those in. I'm really excited about that one. I might like turn in a few myself that don't look as sunburned. So
yeah, and then we're doing live events over the fall to follow up on the reading groups. Why don't we talk about reading groups for a little bit? That'll give Shane and Christian something to talk about.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and then also the live events and reading groups. I guess I can talk about a little more. So the reading groups, who Shane and Christian are two of our awesome SASA educational ambassadors who have ran or are running reading groups. So how the reading groups work, so they're basically online, completely online. They meet once a week on Zoom, and pretty much the leaders send out readings, scanned PDFs and stuff like that of primary source text. In translation, yes, sorry. Also, usually in the original language too, so you can like see these comparisons. A lot of the people who come to the reading groups now are like already in their undergrad or like PhD studies and stuff, but we do have like a good amount of high schoolers and stuff too. They're really open to everybody. So every once in a while we'll get people commenting in the stuff like other translations in other languages and like all this cool stuff. So I really love them. I think they're really fun. I guess if Shane and Christian, if you want to say anything about reading groups, since you lead them.
I'll say, we're focusing on high schoolers and undergrads. This could also be, if you're 75 years old and want to join and just talk about stuff, come join.
Definitely, we have people who are like priests and people who have never studied ancient studies at all, and so it's really a wide range. And I think that's part of what makes them so fun, because there's so many different viewpoints about these different things going into it then.
I know I can't speak to some of the other group leaders, but I know Christian and I have also we're updating what we're reading by week. So if there's things that you come to this that you want to talk about, you just let your reading group leader know, and we'll throw that into the quote unquote syllabus to talk about. These aren't rigid, pre-designed all the way courses. They're for you, they're for the participants, so they're what you want them to be. So that, in some classes we don't necessarily just read primary text. We looked at more archaeological or art history stuff, because that's what the people in there are more interested in.
Or some of the leaders, some of them, Bruno's really into visual learning stuff, so he sends out YouTube videos a lot, and stuff with a lot of pictures and whatever. So it's really a lot of stuff. And also from what I've experienced, I won't try to talk for everyone, but the reading group leaders are very open to like send you stuff if you're interested in something, like sending extra articles and all that kind of stuff. So I'm always telling people that these things are really good resources, even just to use the live syllabus that we use with all of the readings posted in them. Like if you're in school, you can use those things as sources for, like I would use this stuff all the time if I was still writing papers. So yeah, Christian, do you have anything to say about reading groups? Otherwise I can talk about the other new live events, which
well,
are
Christian's had a huge following in his reading groups.
Yes.
So
Yeah, it was a lot of
he
fun
must be
too.
doing something right.
I don't know. You could ask Gunhyuk and see what he said, because he was in my reading group. I don't know if he's still there. But yeah, I thought it went really. You pretty much captured everything about it. The live syllabus thing, I really love that. It kind of started as I just couldn't really block out enough time to just plan out an entire course before it started, because I think mine was starting really soon, and it was like, when am I going to have time to plan out an entire course? So I just did kind of like in my spare time, I just put the next few things, and then it worked so well that we kept going with that. So it was kind of like, it's like that, you know, in every Wild West movie where they're like laying the train tracks as the train is coming down. But it actually was really effective for creating a class that matched what the students were interested in talking about.
I totally agree. Christian was the first one to use the live syllabus, and now people who come to the reading groups know that's how we do all of our reading groups. So basically when you join the group, you get joined to a Google group where we send out the link every week for the Zoom meetings and stuff with readings. But at the beginning, we post the live syllabus where all the links are always posted, including you can comment on it, and you can comment on the PDFs and add your own links or, you know, your comments and questions and stuff. So yeah, I'm actually gonna maybe let someone from a reading group talk about what they think about that.
Yes, let me share something about Christian's class. Yeah, for 2 months ago, maybe, Christian's class was my first SASA class, and then his class captured me for 2 months, and I took all classes of SASA. I'm a big fan of SASA class, and then I learned not only English but also how to think and how to read sources in Asian studies, and then it's very good feeling to be connected with American academia through SASA because I'm, as an Asian student studying in Paris, I feel sometimes a little bit isolated. And then in my field, there's not many Asian students. I'm studying late antiquity Egyptian Christianity. And then, yeah, it's great to be connected with many great thinkers and great researchers. And these days, I have not enough time to read many reading sources, but I'm still enjoying learn from many genius researchers like you. Yeah, thanks, SASA, and I hope many Asian students also join SASA. Thank you.
Yeah, that's another thing too. We are trying to expand as much as we can into like all ancient kinds of fields. Right now we're slightly more stuck in the Mediterranean Near Eastern world, but hopefully that won't last forever. We very much want to include other things. Actually, Shane is probably the one that goes furthest out by teaching about Mesoamerican stuff. And which is great. I very much enjoy Bruno's group this week, which is tomorrow. So if you want to join that one, it's Ghosts, Gods, and Graves. His is talking about Mesoamerica tomorrow too. His is a more archaeology focused group. So we do have some groups that more focus on archaeology versus like just the textual stuff. They provide textual things, but like I said, he provides a lot of videos and stuff because it's a lot of videos of how archaeological things work. So yeah, I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I just want to say on this point that I think this inclusiveness that comes out of this in terms of including people of all different kinds all over the world, which is perfect in terms of using the online virtual platforms that we're working with, and really trying to engage everybody anywhere, wherever they are, whatever they're up to. I think it comes out of our backgrounds of learning about ancient studies, and the realization that develops from that people in different cultures are all interesting and have unique features to them, and really fascinating, but all in some sense the same, right? Cultures in different human societies are all just people, and whether that's in the present or in the past, we're all people. And so our desire to be inclusive, certainly within ancient studies, which we're working on in different ancient times and places, and our desire to include anybody who's interested in learning more about the ancient world, I think stems really for a lot of us from our learning. And I think that's actually an immense value to studying different cultures, especially in the past, because a lot of the times, even though a lot of people in our contemporary society connect themselves to past societies as a way of forming identifications, or part of their identity is that they feel like they're connected to a deeper past. On the other hand, when you're able to study the past in a way that feels sort of separated from the present, you really end up appreciating people for themselves, and the value that different groups of people have in the way that they are. So I think that really shines through for all of us. What else do we have to talk about?
Well, I was gonna say, before we end soon, there's
Yeah,
another
I
reading
think so.
starting in 3 minutes. The Dead Sea Scrolls group with Tina. But I just wanted to quickly mention the fall live events that we are planning. So 3 Saturdays a month starting in the fall. We're not going to have reading groups anymore, because we just know that things are going to be crazy with school starting, no matter what level you're at. Or even if you're
COVID crazy school.
yeah. So anyways, we're doing some cool live events on Saturdays instead, 3 Saturdays a month. So it's like the second, third, and fourth Saturday of the month. And it will be a live like movie watch or gameplay session where we talk about, so like hopefully the first one we're going to do is Assassin's Creed Origins, where we talk about like how it's representing the ancient world, if things are accurate or not, what you can do in the game, if that's accurate or not, all of that
and play together.
And play together. Yes, of course. Sorry. And play together. So yes, just kind of more archeo gaming style of looking at ancient history. Then the second Saturday of the month will be a live Ask the Author Q&A. So we're getting like book authors of fiction and nonfiction, of people who wrote about like ancient stories or whatever, ancient, kind of depends on if it's fiction or nonfiction. And then they'll come to a live Zoom session where we'll have like a little standard question time where they'll talk about what they studied or why they got into the ancient world, about their book, and then also be taking live questions from the audience. And then the last Saturday of the month will be live Ask an Expert Q&A panels, who Shane is actually doing one of them in December. And it will have like a little panel of a few like PhD students or candidates or people with their doctorate. And it will be, again, like kind of a little introduction session about what they study, why they study it, how they got into it, and then open it live to the audience to ask questions about things that like they've always wanted to know about the ancient world and never had access to ask anyone. So really trying to open things up to people and like just get information out there. So like get your questions ready now, you guys. It's happening every Saturday for the fall and hopefully the spring too. And then we'll start reading groups again in the summer for sure, and maybe do mini ones over the winter. Let us know if you're interested in that. We're not sure if people will like not want to look at academic things during their break. So please let us know if you're interested, or any ideas you have for stuff that you think SASA could partake in to get interested in the ancient world. We're always ready to hear your comments and questions and stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for participating in this, and I hope we have lots of people watching this afterwards. And if you have any questions about this afterwards, please just send us an email at info@saveancientstudies.org, and we'll do our best to get back to you and engage with you about whatever you're interested in.
Yeah. Also, you can, on our team page, you can find most of us who are here right now. And you can email us directly and stuff there if you know that you have to ask something about a reading group. I'm the reading group coordinator, that kind of thing. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, whatever time it is out there for you. Yeah. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your comments
Thanks,
about the
everyone.
reading groups.
Okay.
You're welcome. Also.
Bye all.
Okay, bye guys.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.